This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Make another smart choice with Auto Quote Explorer to compare rates from multiple car insurance companies all at once. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
Shouldn't skipping to payday be as easy as skipping to the next song? Introducing MyPay from Chime. Get up to $500 of your pay before payday. Get paid when you save with MyPay. Start at Chime.com. Eligibility requirements apply. Credit limits range from $20 to $500. Provided by the Bancorp Bank N.A. and Stride Bank N.A.
Hey, I'm Candice Lim, and you're listening to ICYMI. In case you missed it, Slate's podcast about internet culture. And I'm really excited to welcome my guest today. She's the founder and supervising editor of NPR's Life Kit, and she's also the author of a new book called Party of One, Be Your Own Best Life Partner. Please welcome to the show, Meghan Keane. Hello, Meghan.
Hello. Thanks for having me, Candice.
Meghan, the funny thing about us is that we actually used to work on the same floor together at NPR.
We sure did.
Fourth floor, best views. And I'm so glad to reunite with you today because I have a question to ask you. Look, Meghan, you are a first-time guest on this show. Therefore, I must ask, what is your first internet memory?
So I wanted to be journalistically true and really think about the first time I experienced the internet. I was like, maybe it was when I started looking up song lyrics, and I thought, no, it was like a little before that. How did I know to search for those things on the internet? And I realized it was when my elementary school class got told, we're going to the library today and the librarians are going to teach you how to use Ask Jeeves. And we sat as a big class. And we all learned Boolean search with quotation marks when you put around certain phrases and all these other things. And just sitting around a computer with 3 other fourth graders, understanding what does it mean to quote, search the internet. So yeah, Ask Jeeves is I think probably my earliest memory.
Okay, question for everyone. Is Ask Jeeves AI?
I guess it has to be. I mean, look, I'm the wrong person to ask, but I wonder if there's a difference in the algorithm being used, but because with Google now, you do get legitimate AI sources on the text box, right? And those are different from just searching the internet for you. But yeah, hard to say. Maybe that was, a foreshadowing event also for me in my youth.
Exactly. Well, speaking of foreshadowing, Meghan, I'm really glad you are here today because the air, it's getting colder, which not only means there is a presidential election coming up, but that we are also approaching cuffing season. This term went viral online a few years ago to demarcate those colder months, post-fall into winter, when everyone in your life suspiciously couples up. And this has kind of bred a whole economy of cozy staying in vlogs, soft and hard launches. But what about those who choose to not cuff up this season or ever? On today's episode, we're talking about what it really means to choose yourself in a world that pressures us to partner, and how the internet helps or hurts this narrative thanks to friendship breakups, dating app screenshots, and Reddit advice. I'll be back with Meghan after the break. Whether you're listening to ICYMI at double speed or regular speed, you'd probably love to know how you can get more cash back on your credit card. Either way, we'll slow things down a bit so you don't miss anything. Discover automatically doubles all the cash back you've earned on your credit card at the end of your first year with Cashback Match. That means with Discover, you could turn $150 cash back to $300. It pays to discover. See terms at discover.com/credit card. This episode is brought to you by Saks.com. There's joy in finding the perfect gift for the ones you love, but it can be a challenge. Saks.com's holiday gift guide makes it easy. Whether you're surprising your hard-to-shop-for sister with a Chloe bracelet bag or gifting your partner a memorable scent from Gucci, at Saks.com, there's holiday inspiration for every personality on your list. I love using Sax.com because it is clean, easy to use, and so fun to scroll around for inspiration. I'm currently on the hunt for a really nice winter coat, and I'm also looking to put together some fun holiday looks, especially with all these Christmas parties coming around the corner. Now, thankfully, Sax has me covered because they have everything my friends have been begging me for, from Le Labo candles to Jo Malone London perfumes. And while I'm there, I might as well throw in these really cute Michael Kors boots I've been dying to gift myself. Sax.com's hand-picked guide can help take the stress out of the holidays. Add instant cheer to your home with some bright decor. Find gifts guaranteed to bring joy to everyone this holiday season at Sax.com. That's Sax.com for the ultimate holiday gift guide and all the shopping inspiration you need. Hey listeners, hope you're enjoying today's show. If this is your first time listening, then welcome. We are thrilled to have you here. In case you missed it, our show comes out twice a week on Wednesdays and Saturdays, so make sure you never miss an episode, like this past Wednesdays on the Victoria's Secret Fashion Show, and why we should have left it in the past. And we're back. I am here with Meghan Keane, the founder of NPR's Life Kit and the author of a new book called Party of One. So Meghan, I ran through your book because right from the beginning, I felt it was so relatable. You know, you speak about this haze, this cloud that kind of started hovering over you when you were around 26, 27, and how you really started to think about your singleness and how it might be a deeper thing worth investigating. I wanted to ask, talk to me about this haze. Like, what made you want to write this book? How did you decide to go from player to coach?
Yeah, the haze is a metaphor that I use to describe the kind of messaging that society puts around single people in particular, or all of us really, to partner up and to have a very certain type of marriage and life. And I call it the haze because, you know, when you're driving in fog and it feels like there is nothing else around you and you feel so claustrophobic, and it just feels like you're never going to get out of this fog. But then as soon as you do, it's like there's this whole world outside of it. That's how I kind of realized this messaging about single life was affecting me. That, oh, I can just like kind of poke my head outside of this cloud, out of this haze, and it's totally fine. There's a whole world out there. There's a whole life out there for me and for everyone. And it was really, you know, shocker, the pandemic that made me start to really think deeply about what it means to step out of the haze, because I was thinking to myself, wow, like I have been conditioned to not just try to find a partner, but go at it with such force and vigor that I'm burning out to the nth degree. And now it was, 2020, and I couldn't really date online as much as I thought I could. And even though I saw headlines would be like, how to get your background right for your online dates in lockdown and quarantine dates and things like that, I was just like, are we really trying to do this in the pandemic? This makes no sense to me. And I was just realizing I was hurting my own feelings and letting a lot of cultural stigma seep into my brain. And I was thinking, this is not sustainable, right? Like I have to imagine two different futures of my life. One where maybe I am partnered for however long, or maybe one where I'm single for however long, right? And those both have to be equally valid and fulfilling to me. Otherwise, I just feel like I'm going to be wasting my, the one short precious life, as they say.
Yeah, I think the pandemic definitely had that effect on a lot of people, where I felt the same way, where I'm like, okay, I don't even know if I'm going to live. I'm not even laughing. How dare you tell me to love in this economy?
Yeah, exactly.
In this economy? And I think, speaking of the pandemic a bit, another, let's say, X factor during that time is literally time. And I want to talk about that because you speak about how you enter your first relationship, that ends, and that person ends up finding their next long-term relationship right after you. And you're like, okay, fine. And then it happens again where the second boyfriend also breaks up with you, finds their next person. And it becomes this kind of like good luck Chuck thing that starts occurring in your life. And you say that at this point, the clock started ticking. I would love to know, what is this clock? What does it sound like? What did it feel like? And what was it telling you?
Yeah, this is kind of a variation, right, at the biological clock, right, to have kids. And for me, it was just honestly to have a meaningful partnership, because I felt like I had a resume with almost no work experience on it. And I saw my friends like, racking up like line after line and job after job, when in fact, in reality, I did have a lot of relationships in my life. I still dated. I had friendships. I have family. I have, a lot of community. Like I was seeing what it meant to have a partnership so narrowly. And it was really freaking me out. So the clock was really me thinking, oh gosh, I am running out of time to have a type of relationship that I would really desire and like, which I think is completely natural. Like we want connection, right? Like I'm not anti-partnership, as I say in the book, but I was starting to feel like, oh my gosh, I am missing out on my chance to really enjoy a meaningful, healthy partnership. And I think having those kind of back-to-back breakups where I was blindsided both times and that they both found their partners right after me, I started to develop this really unhelpful story that I was like the rebound girl, that I was the girl that you come to after a different relationship that was somehow more meaningful, and you use me to like kind of get over that, and then you find your actual partner, right? And I was letting that rebound girl story like play in my head, and I think that paired with the clock of, when am I going to find someone? I have to find someone. There's artificial deadline I'm putting on myself that society's telling me to put myself to be partnered. And those kind of intertwined to be a really miserable overlord that just felt awful and no way to live.
Yeah. Between this haze and this clock, you write about how you started having these negative thoughts about yourself, but the negative thoughts were not the issue. The issue is that you were thinking about them constantly, which really reminded me of the iconic Jemima Kirk IG story where she's like, I think you guys might be thinking about yourselves too much. And honestly, true. Honestly, needed to hear that.
You know what? I think about that meme a lot. Right? I think about I think about it a lot. It's so simple, and it's just, she just lays it out so bare, and it's like, she's so right. Think about myself just a little bit less. Because then as soon as you pick your head up and you look around, you're like, other people are experiencing pain and, insecurities and self-doubt, right? But then there's also a lot of joy happening that I'm missing out by kind of tunneling into my own brain, right?
Yeah. And I think the real ironic but iconic thing about Jemima doing that on IG is that I think we live in a moment where Instagram is not just your life, it is your brand. You do not have to be an influencer, but you must self-mythologize. Like, what is your girl dinner? What Gemini rising behavior did you exhibit today? And I wanted to ask, what do you think are some of maybe the consequences of being on an internet that kind of promotes self-mythologizing as self-awareness? Like, I don't know. Do you think this is good for us?
That's such a good question because, I'm 35. I came of age with the internet, like I said, like in the library, like learning how to Google basically or ask Jeeves something. And the internet was really exciting and a time to have its self-expression. And I just think it's ramped up now from the days of like LiveJournal, right? Where you could just like kind of like blog thoughts and ideas and then take it to now this is the condition of my whole life and exactly what I'm putting out there, right? And I am shocked how often I have to relearn that Instagram and social media is just not real life. I know it sounds so obvious, but I'm constantly like shocked by hearing from people when after they post something like, oh yeah, and like my baby was crying that whole flight. Me and my husband got into a fight, but we got the one good picture, And I love those trends on TikTok, especially where they'll have like Instagram versus reality of like fancy tourist destinations, right? They'll be like, here's how it looks when it's all cleaned up. And then here's the reality with the kind of like funny music, right? Change. It is interesting because I feel like it is important to talk about what you're thinking and relate to other people, right? And social media can be a really wonderful way to do that. But you're right. As soon as you start to self-mythologize, you do run the danger of becoming one thing to yourself and to other people. And you might be forgetting the complexities of what you're actually going through. I wrote this book because I was thinking to myself, I am inside my own head so much, and it feels very hard to make this feeling tangible, which is, I know I would love to have a partner, but I'm also ashamed and feeling bad about being single sometimes. Sometimes I feel great, but I feel like I'm in this funny in-between space where I would see online people who are 10 steps ahead of me, which I thought was great, where they were like, I love being single. I'm never getting married. I'm never going on dating apps again. And I was like, I think that's amazing, but I'm not there yet. Right. And I would see other people who are, performing their social media life of being married and, having a ton of kids. And I was like, I'm also not there either. Right. So I think sometimes we sometimes boil down too much into the essence of what we were trying to show about ourselves. And then you kind of only flatten yourself and become one thing.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because your book comes at such a good time that is so ripe for this conversation. My TikTok For You page is filled with so many successful, beautiful, smart, funny women talking about this exact thing that you kind of went through in your book. And they're posting vlogs about a Friday night in as a single woman in her 30s or living alone in New York City. And I think the good news is that the internet kind of reaffirms that this population exists of oh, I'm not alone. I'd love to know what other ways did social media and the internet play into your writing and research?
It's interesting because as I was writing the book, I was seeing a lot of TikToks and Instagram reels like you're talking about where people are like, here's my night in. I'm actually not interested in dating, or I'm maybe interested in dating, but I'm going to prioritize my own peace. Right. And to the point where I was like, am I going to be too late to a conversation? Did I miss the boat on talking about this? Because I was thinking, I was like, my book is very specifically for people who have had these feelings of I know it's okay to be single, but I need a little bit of help getting my head and heart there. And I was like, man, I'm seeing this incredible change on social media that people were like, I'm good. And I was like, oh, maybe I'm going to sound like the old lady that's out of touch. But it's again, a reminder that, again, social media is just one snapshot of where you are that day. Right. And so I know there were days that I loved being, I love being on my own, right? And having that internal time and on my own time. But then there are days where, I did feel man, I'm really frustrated with dating, or, I wish I had someone, right? And so social media was interesting because I had to, again, remind myself it's not the whole story. I also thought wow, maybe culture is evolving in a really wonderful way. And maybe people can read my book and feel affirmed and feel maybe they're already on the other side. And maybe they got a little farther earlier than I did, which felt good. But honestly, in a boring way too, I honestly used it for sourcing a lot. I was looking to see if there's any interesting people who are talking about this topic. And, there's so many therapists online now that make a social media following. And so I used a lot of my life kit skills there.
Yeah. And I think one way that I felt your book really grounded this conversation we're having is you write about overthinking and how it kind of causes us to just not think deeply as much. And I wonder if this has been exacerbated by the literal TikTok function of scrolling through videos, right? Or the Twitter algorithm of literally going funny tweet, dead corpse, funny tweet, spam. And I think people love to talk about how we have shortened attention spans, but I actually wonder if it's that we don't practice critical thinking as much. And part of that is unfortunately self-inflicted because we are the ones spending time in the portal. We go to TikTok, we go to Twitter for the dopamine hit, and unfortunately it works for a second. But I don't know. Do you think that we scroll because we don't want to be alone with our thoughts? And is that breeding overthinking but not deeply thinking?
Oh, yes. I think that's totally what's happening. I mean, look, I love TikTok for a lot of reasons. I get some of my most genuine laughs from the internet from TikTok, right? So I can kind of do that tricky thing around I just want to laugh or learn something. But then it does, I think, take a small cheese grater to your brain every so often, right? And just kind of slowly shaves off a little bit of those critical thinking skills. And I feel like that type of passive scrolling, is something that I definitely use to escape myself and to not think and to numb out. And yeah, I think you're right. As a result, I'm not thinking as deeply, right, when I'm on there. I've talked about this other places, but I'm trying to reclaim my long format brain is what I'm calling it. And it's a phrase that I partly stole from Ann Patchett, the writer who I saw talk about this idea of long format kids being kids who can sit on a plane, kids who can read a whole book, things just kind of be bored, basically, and also give attention to things. And so I've been trying to reinvest in that. And that means having the self-awareness for when I do pick up my phone to look at TikTok, think, maybe you are trying to escape something right now. That's okay. Are you going to pass go now and pay that toll? Or are you going to stop and to make a different choice? Right. And for me, the different choice is often like reading. It's getting outside, right? It's like doing something tactile with my hands. And it is more and more I see like just being self-aware, like having that quick moment of like, am I actually opting into this is so crucial.
Yeah. And speaking of long form, I kind of wanted to ask about your perspective on relationships as an audio producer because, you start a chapter of your book talking about how you attempted to navigate dating the way that you navigate work and coming up in the audio world literally feet from you. I also wondered the same thing often of like, is the thing I'm paid to do actually hindering my social life? And so I wanted to ask for you, what is it about our specific industry and our job that kind of makes us both prime and not prime for the modern dating world? Because you talk about crashing, which ironically, not the same as crashing out, but very NPR term. It's like when you're on deadline, segment needs to go to air in 1 hour, source just turned in audio, cut the 20 into 5, get in front of a host, and you see how stressed I am. That is exactly the vibe of crashing. And I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts on how that kind of carried over or maybe didn't carry over into the way you dated?
Yeah. Crashing is such a, like you said, such an NPR term. And the idea is that you can basically tell people to like leave you alone. You'd be like, I'm crashing. Don't bother me. You have one sole focus is to get this done. And in radio, the segment will air. There will be a time when it's over, right? But when you're dating, it is like an open question mark when that is quote unquote done, right?
Yeah.
So I was taking this kind of crashing mindset of whatever it takes, sole focus, keep going, keep scrolling, keep, that person's done, just keep moving on, like keep it moving attitude to dating. And I've heard like people, talk about this kind of like girl boss mentality of like, just treat dating like it's your job, right? And so I kind of took that to heart, maybe a little too hard. And it meant that I just like really burned out in terms of dating. And I opened myself up to a lot more rejection or having to reject people or just feeling like bad because I was a woman on online dating apps, right? So the journalism audio producer mindset of crashing, I think was definitely a hindrance. And it's interesting too, because I've talked with people before about how being a journalist on a date, especially an early date, is kind of funny because we're good at asking questions and we can kind of be like, well, this happened and this is interesting and like kind of carry a conversation. And then so people would think, oh, wow, we had this really great time because basically I took care of them like socially, like I was able to like ask them a lot of questions but I didn't actually have a deep connection necessarily. And so I've seen how that can be a hindrance as well. My journalistic brain was just kind of more in work mode rather than like, do I actually like this person? Do I feel like myself around this person? And I think what's been good to see is that online, people saying like, maybe I actually don't have to do this. I can opt out or I can think about this differently. And I also like had to really pull back the amount of energy that I was solely putting on dating because it was so consuming in a way that felt really bad.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us identify with that. And so I kind of want to get your take on a few things I've seen online that may or may not resonate with your book and your readers. And so let's take a break. When we come back, I'm going to get Meghan's take on a few social media trends that make me wonder if the internet is pro-singlehood after all. All that and more after the break. Whether you're listening to ICYMI at double speed or regular speed, you'd probably love to know how you can get more cash back on your credit card. Either way, we'll slow things down a bit so you don't miss anything. Discover automatically doubles all the cash back you've earned on your credit card at the end of your first year with Cashback Match. That means with Discover, you could turn $150 cash back to $300. It pays to Discover. See terms at discover.com/credit card.
Introducing My Pay from Chime, a revolutionary new way to get paid. Let's say new dates to your favorite band's sold-out tour drop Tuesday, but you get paid Friday. Life doesn't wait for payday. With My Pay from Chime, you can get up to $500 of your pay before payday. No interest, no credit check, no mandatory fees. My Pay. Get paid when you say. Start at Chime.com. Eligibility requirements apply. Credit limits range from $20 to $500. $2 fee to get funds instantly. Provided by the Bancorp Bank N.A. and Stride Bank N.A.
It's Croctober, the official celebration of Crocs fans like you. So whether you like to rock your classic clogs, get cozy and fuss-lined, personalize with your favorite Jibbitz charms, or even, dress up like a clog for Halloween, it's time to tell your story and share your style. Join the Croctober celebration with Crocs fans around the world. Go to Crocs.com to discover the range of shoes and find a pair that's iconic like you. Crocs, celebrating you all month long.
And we're back. So, Meghan, I wanted to get your take on a few internet trends that I've been seeing this year, thinking about wanting to get a temperature check on. I would love to start with cutting off your friend culture. Have you heard of this?
Yes. This is just to confirm when you decide that this friendship, quote unquote, no longer serves you, right? Mm-hmm. And you're like, I'm no longer going to engage with this friend.
Yeah. So I bring this up because in your book, you write that a good person to vent to is someone who is good at comforting and validating, but also good at giving you that gentle bit of reality. And you continue by saying that you deserve to be picky about who your venting partners are. And I found this so interesting because I feel like during the pandemic, there was this growing conversation on Twitter, especially that if you have a friend, no matter how close, how low stakes, if they do not serve you or support you in the way you need them to, you cut them off, you ghost them, you don't even explain it. And I'd love to get your take on this because I want to believe that your book lies somewhere between cutting off your friends 2K24, but also seeing people not as services, but as community. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yes. Yeah, I would say I'm not a huge fan of cutting off people just for the sake of cutting them off. Now, there are times when someone is acting truly toxic or abusive, right? Of course, that's a very different situation. But it sounds like what we're talking about, what the internet kind of culture is talking about, is when someone doesn't perfectly 100% validate you or show up for you exactly how you want to be shown up for. I think cutoff culture forgets that you can have conversations with these friends, right? You can offer or reach out and say, hey, like, even if like I've been that person too, where I'm like, I'm in a busy season right now. I have a book out and I can't make it to that, concert or whatever, but I would love to see you when I'm back. Like, can we get coffee or something? And like, just put something on the calendar. In the chapter I write about friendship, there's this researcher, Marissa Franco, who wrote this great book called Platonic. And in her book, she talks about this idea of communal boundaries, which I think is such a nice answer to cutoff culture, where instead of being like, I'm not doing that 100%, thinking about, okay, well, I want to keep this person in my life. What can I give out of the intention of staying in community with them? Now, look, it's okay to be like, I don't want to go to that concert or like at that live festival because I'm just not a festival girl, right? I don't want to stand for hours or whatever it is. I'm not saying you can't say, you're allowed to say no to events and things. But I think we have to remind ourselves we are trying to stay in communion with people most of the time, right? And like boundaries are the distance at which you love someone, right? And so I think it's important to also remember that there are a diversity of friendships, right? Not everyone is going to be your closest bestie. And I'm hoping that the people that you do find yourself extra close with are the ones that you are able to have these conversations with. They're like, hey, that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Like, can we just talk about that? This is how I felt. How did you feel? Versus like the friend who's like more of like a casual acquaintance, right? Like, you don't have that vulnerability maybe set up with them or that history. So they probably don't know how you like are going to react in a certain situation. So I can't think of a single relationship of any kind that I get like 100% out of everything, right? I don't think anyone does. Like, you have to like be like, oh, maybe I'm the person who's kind of rocking the boat here unnecessarily and recognize your part and come to a consensus. But it's just about, keeping conversation, just have a talk.
Yeah. And speaking of conversation, this brings me to Reddit, because early in the book, you write about how if you're single, you kind of need to just throw away the idea that something is wrong with you, because more often than not, nothing is wrong with you. And it just made me think about subreddits like Am I the Asshole? The Hinge subreddit, where people will literally like post their profiles being like, hey guys, let me know what's wrong with me. And people will be like, yeah, first photo sucks, you look like a murderer, your third question is cheesy. And I just think it's really funny because on top of all of that, It's a bit self-aggrandizing, but also the worst advice I always hear on the subreddit is that dating apps, they're just a numbers game. And I just wanted to know, what is your response to this idea that to be market fit, to be dateable, you must be fixed? And if you're going to get fixed, why not ask a bunch of strangers on Reddit?
I mean, with the Reddit conversation, I do think sometimes people are seeking a quote unquote neutral voice, or people who just aren't in their friend group, right? Or their families, to give them what they think is the unfiltered, unvarnished truth. And that feels like a very harsh space.
It's very out of context. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very out of context. And even if what people are saying is somewhat true, everyone is giving you a different set of standards about their own feedback. It's kind of like, when you and I are in edits for a piece, right? For a podcast, you have to kind of train yourself to know what feedback to actually take and what feedback you're like, that's a good point, but I'm going to let that roll off my back for now. And I think when you hear it on the internet, everything just becomes immediate. Like, I have to then take that as feedback, or everything is now valid, and it's harder to have that filter on of like what things to let go and what things to actually implement. So I feel for those people who feel, who do want like genuine feedback. But yes, this idea that you have to like fix yourself to then be fit for a relationship. I mean, what I always come back with is, and this is a common idea. Well, don't we all know someone who's in a relationship who could probably stand a little therapy or a little extra help? Like, not everyone is perfectly fit emotionally, socially, mentally, to then go into a relationship. There's no standards necessarily that let you into a relationship. It's just when two people decide, hey, we're going to be in a relationship. So I think we can kind of dispel that notion that we have to be fixed. Like, that was something I was really careful about in the book. I was like, this is not a book about getting yourself comfortable with yourself so then you can be in a relationship. I think these are skills that everyone should have, no matter the relationship status. And turning down the pressure to partner, I think, is good for everyone.
Yeah. I kind of want to bring up another thing that I feel like I've actually been trying to find a hole for on this show. Haven't found it until now, which is run clubs. Okay, run clubs are these local jogging groups that they wake up at 6 a.m., they run around Venice Beach, they stop traffic. And it's funny because at first it was kind of a community building exercise. Some were specifically for cultural bonding, but then it became a singles event and a way to kind of quote unquote meet your next relationship. And from there it spiraled. It is now a joke. I'd love to know what you think about run clubs.
Run clubs. I'm pretty neutral about them. I quit running a few years ago.
Amazing. Yes.
But yes, I know what the DC equivalent, I know I live in Washington, DC, and there's definitely run clubs there. It's a big part of the culture, but there's also a lot of kickball leagues, right? Especially when you're in your 20s.
Yep.
I can't pretend like I didn't date someone from my early 20s kickball league, because I sure did. They basically function as social clubs for people to meet a potential significant other. I think they're utterly fine and useful if you are going there to truly just enjoy an activity. If you're going there to try to meet someone in that angle, you're almost always going to be disappointed. I ended up doing 2 volleyball leagues in my 20s. And the first time I did it, I was like, maybe I'll meet someone. And I got in a league. There was no single guys on the team. And then, you do meet up with other people, but it was automatically, I was like, well, I'm stuck with this for 8 weeks or whatever. So I have to kind of dispel this notion of I'm going to meet someone this way and just have fun and enjoy the physical activity. And I actually kind of learned about myself that I'm not half bad at volleyball.
Hey.
And then I did it again the next season. But this time I was like, I'm just going to enjoy the activity. And it was the sandlots on the mall, right by the Lincoln Memorial. And it was in the summer, and it was just so beautiful. And I would bike there. And I was like, this is so nice for what it is. So run clubs, look, everyone needs an identity. Everyone needs a tribe. If that's yours, great. If you're using it as a vehicle only to meet people, then I think it gets tricky, and then you're maybe setting yourself up for a slight disappointment.
Yeah, and if you're using it to run away from something, buy this book, okay?
Literally, yes. Yeah, run right to the bookstore. Yeah, exactly.
Now, another thing that you write about is Disney princess discourse and how it kind of might have led a generation of women to grow up believing that they had to wait for a white knight to rescue and marry them into the sunset. And it kind of perpetuated this idea that the most aspirational thing a woman can do is be in a relationship. And I think for me, my version of this is tabloids and celebrity couples, because I think about the fact that when you're on Instagram, celebrity accounts are kind of back to back with your friends. And therefore, there is kind of this weird symbiosis where you kind of equate those people to each other. So, for example, if a celebrity performs a relationship on social media, i.e. J-Lo, who, by the way, would love your book, I think that's kind of influenced regular people to like also perform their relationship on social media. And so I'm in a place where literally I cannot stand a TikTok couple account. If your handle has the word and in it, I will block you. I will block you. It shouldn't be an and. It should be a but. It should be Kyle but Jeanette. Anyway, I wanted to ask for your thoughts on that. Like, what do you think are the consequences of people not only performing their relationship, but also strategizing everything from the breakup to the rebound to the statement? Like, what is going on there?
Yeah. I mean, for those influencers, right, there's money to be made, right? So then you're automatically putting this like huge amount of pressure on your relationship because it becomes your livelihood for some people, right? Mm-hmm. Now, for like lower stakes, if you're not like making a ton of cash doing brand deals and you're still kind of doing this performance of a relationship, to me, it feels like you're living in like two parallel universes at the same time.
Sure.
You have this version that you're broadcasting to the world, and then you're doing the day-to-day living of the thing. And there has to be some cognitive dissonance going on there. I can't imagine that you're actually living super fully. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm going to get some DMs now from some like social media, like couple influencers. But to me, it would feel like there's so much cognitive dissonance between what it means to be online with your relationship versus offline. And then I think it would also maybe prevent you from actually talking about when something is bothering you, right? Because you do have to put on this happy face for a video, right, as you're recording. So I do wonder if this, forcing to put on a very specific veneer then prevents people from doing a lot of critical thinking or deep work about, hey, like, let's talk about this in a very real way and discuss things and get into the nitty gritty and the nuance, because you do have to kind of delete a lot of that nuance and scrub off that nuance when you're doing a video. So yeah, I agree with you. It's tough to see, especially the very like extremely quote unquote happy couples on Instagram. But it also gives you like, it's funny you say that thing about the celebrities being in your feed, because celebrities a lot of times often seem to always meet someone new because they're always meeting other people. They're in like these highly social circles and being introduced to people. So it then gives this illusion that like meeting someone you actually like is like easy no matter what. And that was not the case for me. I was like, man, I really don't like a lot of people that I go out on dates with. And it feels like it's hard to connect with people. And yet all these other people seem to be making connections no problem. So that also gives another type of cognitive dissonance on the other side of the phone.
Yeah. And the other thing too, and I'm trying to like figure out how envious I am of this, is the fact that celebrities and influencers use their Instagram profiles as dating app profiles. And sometimes I'm kind of like, look at that. You could just bypass that and get a freaking NFL quarterback to slide into your DMs. If only it could be me. And it's like, well, I mean, on the other side, they probably don't love that. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's this big outcry of dating apps that they're seeing a big drop in Gen Z, right? Not using dating apps like Bumble and Tinder. Like they're really freaking out because the millennials and Gen Xers and older people are kind of the main users of dating apps still, and they're having trouble getting new users. But what I've been finding kind of anecdotally is that Gen Z and younger people still use the internet to date. They're just sliding into DMs, right? They're using TikTok. They're not using the gamification necessarily of dating apps as much, but they're still sliding into DMs, which is kind of, I think, newer to people who are like 35-year-old millennials like me. I mean, it happens, right? But I think millennials especially are still like, well, dating apps are the only way.
Yeah, which brings me to My least favorite part of dating app culture, which is people taking screenshots of their dating app DMs.
Oh my God. Yes. I know you're talking about. Oh boy.
So this is a phenomenon where people on Twitter and TikTok and Insta will post like a screenshot of something crazy someone said to them like on Grindr. And here's my deal. If someone sends you like a dick pic or something really heinous, racist, sexist, or they're like actually committing crimes like scams, go for it. But I wonder if screenshot culture is causing people to approach dating apps with hesitation, that the person they're talking to will like screenshot their convo, post it online, and all of a sudden you're clown of the week, or you're getting posted on like those Instagram aggregate accounts like Unhinged on Hinge. And so first off, what is your take on screenshotting dating app convos? And what else about dating app culture do you think leads people to choose themselves over the constant like download, delete, downloaded Sunday night, delete one more time?
Yeah. Screenshotting on dating apps, it's tricky because I think it's important to keep people accountable of their actions and when they behave poorly. And there is such little recourse through the official channels, right? Sometimes that it does feel like the Wild West in terms of accountability, right? And I don't think that people are more hesitant then to be themselves because they're in fear of being screenshotted, because I find those people are not super self-aware.
Okay.
And they're going to do that anyway.
Okay.
And right. And then on the other side, though, like I understand like the huge frustrations with being on dating apps and the need to like share, like, isn't this wild? I see that like in the DMs, or rather like in the group chat, I think is like totally fine. I'm just not someone who like would put that out very publicly, because then I feel like that becomes a performance of I'm only doing this for my own clout or validation. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. It's tricky because I do think, again, people need to be held accountable for when they act really poorly on these apps, because it does feel like you're in these private hallways sometimes in dating apps, and then something kind of messed up or weird happens to you. You're like, did anyone else see that? Right. I find just like posting the screenshots to be, I think, kind of just tiring, and it just makes the whole experience like feel worse over and over again. And so I do think that's why people end up getting off dating apps, because they do feel like I can't get another message from someone just saying, hey. And I think where my thinking has come in is like, well, what would it mean to like take a more meaningful break and to not have the goal, quote unquote, be to like meet someone and get married, right? What if it's just to like enjoy your life? And I do think more people are catching on to that and being like, I'm taking maybe a permanent break from dating apps, which I think is like incredible. Or sometimes people being like, actually, I'm just really not going to like go hard on dating apps and really only go on like a handful of dates in a year through dating apps, and then just kind of letting my life unfold naturally. And I see people taking that option more and more, which is, I think, very cool.
Yeah. And speaking of unfolding naturally, I kind of want to end on a bit of a twist, because you wrote your book while you were single and happy doing so. And then something kind of unexpected happened. Megan, what happened?
Well, I met someone, and I know. And it's so funny because everyone loves to be like, well, of course, when you wrote a book, this would happen, right? And then it's like, you least expected your way. And I'm always like, stop right there. Like, I gave up on dating a million times.
Yeah.
Like, people are always like, when you give up on dating, it'll happen. I gave up on dating a million times.
Yeah.
I deleted apps a million times. I also least expected my way a million times. I did a life kit version of this book earlier in 2022 before I sold the book about this topic. And I actually got dumped after that piece came out by someone who I had been like just briefly seeing, but was like very into and so excited about. And then they were like, I'm good.
Yeah.
So it just boiled down to like luck and timing is what I realized. Like, it's not because I like put some special line or format into my dating profile, or I went on a million dates, or I can't pretend like I am a dating expert by any means, right? I just know that I met my partner because it was timing and luck. And even if we were meant to be together, like we were destined, this person was in relationship for a while I was on the dating app. So if someone could have tapped me on the shoulder being like, hey, you are going to need someone, just like in 5-7 years, you can relax. Like, they're tied up right now. Just wait it out. I've been like, great. Like, I'm going to go enjoy my life. So what's been interesting with writing the book while I was starting this relationship, I started to realize how much of the tools in the book are just so still relevant, even if you're in a relationship. And it's also kept me super accountable to my single friends, to not, feel like I'm on, quote unquote, the other side and that I'm abandoning them. And so my partner and I have really strict rules around how we talk about our single friends or talk to our single friends. So, for instance, we don't ask to see their dating apps, or we don't bring up dating unless our friend brings it up and wants to talk about it. I also don't offer advice about dating unless someone directly asks me, I would like your advice now. To the point now where I have friends who are like shaking me by the shoulders, basically like, I am asking your advice. Like, Phil, don't hold out on me. And I also, again, I don't espouse that I know anything about what it takes to meet someone for a partnership, because I don't. I happen to meet a person who really worked. We have the same values. And I was less concerned about myself, like attaching too much self-worth into a relationship. Whereas in my 20s, in the relationships I write about in the book, I felt like my whole self-worth was on the line in those relationships. And that's why it was so devastating when they ended, because I felt like I am like an outcast now. And now I feel a lot more secure about myself and how life can change and evolve. And I feel more like I actually talked with my partner about like deep values about our life, rather than just like not like leaving things kind of unsaid and very fragile. And so I feel really grateful that I was actually older, quote unquote, older when I met my partner, because I feel like I was able to learn a lot of lessons about myself. And I feel grateful too that other people are now learning those lessons a lot earlier, and choosing like peace and ease for themselves, no matter what the relationship is. But the joke is that the next book is Party of Two, right? But I don't know about that. We'll see.
That's so funny. I mean, I think at the end of the day, I really gleaned your vulnerability from the book. And I think what makes it so special is that you wrote about growing up as an only child. And in a way, you are a big sister to a lot of people who need to hear it via this book.
Oh,
and
that's so sweet.
I think what the real takeaway is that write a book, get a boyfriend. That's the vibe. That's the vibe.
No.
Megan's like, okay, so we're not sisters anymore. We're not sisters anymore.
No.
Okay, that's the show. Many thanks to my guest, Meghan Keane, for joining me on today's episode. You can find her book, Party of One, wherever you get your books. We'll be back in your feed on Wednesday, so definitely subscribe. That way, you never miss an episode. Leave us a rating and a review in Apple or Spotify, and tell your friends about us. You can follow us on Twitter at ICYMI_pod, and you can always drop us a note at ICYMI@slate.com. ICYMI is produced by Se'era Spragley Ricks and me, Candice Lim, with production assistance from Alexandra Botti. Daisy Rosario is our senior supervising producer, and Alicia Montgomery is Slate's vice president of audio. See you online or not in a run club.
I said to Roger, the last thing you are fair and balanced. That should have been my slogan.
When the Fox News Channel first went on the air, it promised to change television.
Few broadcasts take any chances these days, and most are very politically correct. Well, we're going to be different.
It's going to be kick-ass, and I want to be part of it.
I'm Josh Levine. In this season of Slow Burn, we'll look at the moment in the early 2000s when Fox News became a political and cultural force.
I'm okay with wearing an American flag, and if you're not, I think you need to examine who you are.
You'll hear from Fox insiders, many who've never spoken out before.
I was not told about that beforehand, for good reason. I wouldn't have gone along with it.
And you'll hear from the activists and comedians who tried to stop it.
He said, "You're being sued by Fox." I went, "Really? That's fabulous."
Slow Burn Season 10, The Rise of Fox News. Hear the entire season now, wherever you listen.